We are in Proverbs chapter 16, beginning that chapter. It begins with these words, Proverbs 16, verse 1. And this is one of those proverbs where we are getting into some difficult sayings. The preparations of the heart belong to man, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. Now, if we were to just take this out without anything else, we can come to a conclusion. I don't think it would be the proper conclusion, but we could come to the conclusion. But we can look at some other things. One is just to begin with. Proverbs 16:9, just going down. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Okay. Proverbs 15:28, going back, the heart of the righteous studies how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours forth evil. But there is the righteous studies how to answer. That goes to 16:1. The preparations of the heart belong to man. All right, and so the heart of the righteous studies how to answer. Then we have Proverbs 21:13. You have that of the horse is prepared for battle, but deliverance is of the Lord. That there may be certain things that we prepare ourselves to do, that we design to do, but the end result may be from the Lord. All right, we have to ask. First off, we're going to ask a question. Is it possible that providence is involved in the actions that we do? And the answer is yes. We can be part of an instrument of providence that God sets in place, and we have no idea. Now, when it comes to our own lives and providence being applied to us, that God obviously did these certain events to bring us into this point, we can look backwards and see. We can look back through time in our own history of our life and see, if this hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. And if this hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. And if this hadn't happened, all these things happened and they led me to this point. Okay, all these things happened. Good or bad or whatever it was, I arrived at this point. But what if you're not the one that's being affected so providentially that you are part of the process for somebody else? That, we can think of point A, point B, and point C because those things happen. I know I'm now over at this point altogether. But what if you were the one at point A? Or you're the one that affected that person. You may have no idea that you were playing a role providentially for that person at all. You'd have no idea. You'd have no idea that what you did affected them. You may never have seen them again in your life. That affected them in a certain way. I will not say the providence of God doesn't work through everybody, because it can. Even very wicked people can do things in the plans of God. They can do it. We have someone like the Babylonian Empire, someone like the Assyrian Empire, someone like Pharaoh of Exodus. All right, God is using them in certain ways, and it's by way of providence that Pharaoh, that man became Pharaoh in Exodus, the Pharaoh of Exodus. All right, it is. By the providence, it wasn't a miracle that he became Pharaoh. It was by providence that he became Pharaoh. Okay, so we're talking about providence. Is it possible that God works through us providentially and we don't even, for someone else, for some other reason, it doesn't directly involve where we end up or anything concerning our futures necessarily, of altering things for us in any such way, but we may be a worker for somebody else. Well, with being used by God to help somebody else or guide somebody else, or that they're going in a certain direction. Well, the answer to that is yes. Now, we come back because I think that there's more in this than providence. The preparations of the heart belong to man, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. So with this second part, and we've talked about this, these are not two separate ideas. They go together. The second part is going to tell us what the first part is all about. Because we can go with the preparations of the heart belong to a man. Okay, what if my preparation of the heart is to go to such and such a city, make money, we're going to make a profit there, and all will be good. All right, making that kind of preparation, that kind of plan. Well, the answer of the tongue is from the Lord, so it can't be that sort of preparation, can it? It can't be that sort. It must be, and this is bringing things back in line, and we've already mentioned a number of other verses in Proverbs. All right, Proverbs 3:6, He shall direct your steps. Let's get that whole proverb, as a matter of fact. Proverbs 3 and verse 6, in your ways acknowledge Him, that is the Lord, and He shall direct your paths. Okay. Can that play a part in 16:1? Can 3 and verse 6 also be a part in our understanding of 16:1? That the preparations of the heart belong to man, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord? Well, yes. He will direct your steps if you acknowledge Him. Now, what would be this preparation of the heart? It would have to be how to answer. It'd have to be. It'd have to be in what should be said, what is the advice, what is the answer in all of this, what is it? And it's something that's going to be spoken or communicated in one way or another. The preparations of the heart belong to man. It's you got to do it. All right. The emphasis in this first part is you're doing it. All right. It's not that it's going to hop into your head. It's that you are showing initiative. And serving God is not taking it easy and just everything is just going to appear, everything is just going to be fine, and there's nothing that you're not involved at all. Well, you are involved. You've got to be involved. That you have to have your own personal faith, you have to have your own obedience, and that does mean works, and that may very well mean preparations of the heart. And if you are truly after wisdom, that preparation is going to take you to the wisdom of God. And the answer will be coming from Him. It will be coming from Him, because if we go to the Bible, not just Proverbs, but if we go to the Bible seeking and trying to find an answer, the answer is going to be there. We have to take the time and the effort to get it, to get there. And, it could be as simple as ask, seek, knock, which also requires an action out of us individually. That you've got to do the asking, you've got to do the seeking, you've got to do the knocking. Okay? You've got to do those things. And notice you've got the ask and the seek, rather the ask and the knock, all right, which seems like that's the easiest way, but also involved in there is the seeking. That we must seek the answer. So if we are doing due diligence, if we're doing precisely what we should be doing in trying to answer a question, trying to give proper advice, that answer is going to be from the Lord, because the biblical text is from the Lord. All right, it's not that someone is suddenly going to be an inspired speaker, because it's not saying that, and that will not be the case. But it is that of finding the answer, that God has given, and because of taking the time to go look for it and then providing that answer. And there's the preparation. And the preparation, lazy man's not going to do that. Lazy man, the preparations of heart belong to a man. His preparations may just be that of preparing to be lazy. And that's just looking forward to be lazy. That's it. And there's not going to be a good answer coming from that man. There's not going to be. Now, we go to verse 2. All the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirits. Okay, so we have this, and this is easy enough. It's not one of the more difficult ones. And we've already been introduced to this subject. There's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof is the way of death. The way seems right, but that is the way of death. And that's 14 and verse 12. Proverbs 16 and verse 11, if we just look at that, honest weights and scales are the Lord's. All the weights in the bag are His work. All right, and it is going to be just weights, a true standard that He gives. But Proverbs 21:2, every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the hearts. All right, that's very similar in wording to this, weighing the spirits, weighing the hearts. So we begin with the first one. Anyone can justify their own actions. And it is regardless of the action. You talk to, as though you're going to have the opportunity. You might, but I doubt it. You talk to like a hitman who is now in prison, all right, and he's liable to tell you everyone I killed deserved to die. All right, well, that sounds like justification to me. That sounds exactly everyone, or it could be someone that may have killed a friend of, he deserved to die, and let me tell you why he deserved to die. Or we can just ramp it up to someone who is high in power, doing wicked things. I have a feeling that if we had gone to someone like Idi Amin could have justified his works. That he had to do that for the sake of his country, that he had to do that for the sake of keeping law and order, that he had to do that, otherwise he would have been, he could have told us anything, and anybody can justify any kind of action they have done. You can convince yourself of it. And all the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes. He sees himself as likable because he likes himself, or she sees herself that way, that she sees herself as we will just call it the protagonist of the story. She's the main subject of the story because it's her life or his life. And what they did was right, regardless of how anybody else sees it. But the Lord weighs the spirits. And we have places such as Daniel chapter 5, where that is precisely what happens. Daniel chapter 5, we have Belshazzar, who is, I believe he's the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. It is his reign. He is having a great time in Babylon, having this extraordinary feasts that are there. And he commands that all the things that were taken, all the articles that were taken out of the house of Jehovah, that Nebuchadnezzar brought out, are brought into this feast. And it's now part of this very decadent feast that's going on, this hedonistic, drunken revel. But we have the part of a hand is writing a very strange message on the wall, and Belshazzar sees it. That part of a hand, and in my mind, it's just the necessary fingers that for holding this piece of charcoal or piece of chalk or whatever is being used to write it. And he sees that. Well, if you saw it too, it would concern you. And I know it would me, as to what am I looking at, and I'm looking at it, and it's writing something, and the message has got to be important. All right, well, Belshazzar had no idea what it meant, but we go to Daniel chapter 5 and verse 26. Daniel tells what the interpretation is. It's mene, tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of each word. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Perez, which that's another form, or I think it's the singular form of that word upharsin. Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Now, if we could, I think that any one of them could have read the words, but it wouldn't have made any sense. Literally, it would have been like dime, quarter, nickel. It's literally like that. Well, what does that mean? All right, well, you don't know. But there is an interpretation to it. What does that mean? And that Belshazzar has been weighed in the balance, and he's lacking. Weighed in the balance, and that is a scary thing. That God had an expectation on him, and he did not meet up to it. And of course, we see where he is making a mockery out of the things that had been in that temple, and those things are now part of this sort of hedonistic feast going on, this party that's going on, and they're praising the gods of gold and of silver and of stone and all of that. And it is meant to be blasphemous. It is meant to be that way. Aside from the fact of all the drinking and all the other things that were probably going on in that, you don't measure up. Here in what are the weights? Well, the weights happen to be here. You're asking what is the standard? The standard is here. This is the standard. And of course, the standard that Belshazzar would have been under would have been a standard set forth going back to the days of Noah and back to the days of Cain and Abel. That would have been the standard he was under, and the same standard that was in the days of Melchizedek and Abraham. That's the same standard. That righteousness was expected, and a protection of righteousness was expected. These things are in those weights, and all right, he didn't measure up at all. And so the Lord weighs the spirits. He is judge. So it doesn't matter how someone may justify, or you or me may justify our actions. It doesn't matter at all. It's meaningless. It's God who's going to judge. And we will just do this in two ways. Of something that we see as good, and God has a different idea on it, and that is horrible. All right, going by His standard, and He's not silent about it. We could discover that such an action is horrible. If you've ever heard someone who has obviously committed some wrongdoing, and usually it's pretty big, And if you've ever heard them say, "This is not me," well, let's just rephrase that. I mean, you obviously did it. This is not me. Well, this is not how you should have been, and this is not how you used to be, but you still did it. And I'm glad that you feel like it was the wrong thing to do. I'm glad you feel that way. But to think that somehow that doesn't now define you, well, it's in your past. You did it. All right, now it's part of your history. Now you can correct that. It's always going to be part of your history, but you can correct it, and it's not going to be held against you by God. By a human court, that's a different matter. But by God, God can forgive sins. And we come now to the other side of it, that we may do something that we don't think is really that great. It's not, it is giving. What does Jesus say concerning giving a child a cup of water in His name? That doesn't make the headlines. That doesn't make you a hero in anybody's eyes. That's a nothing action. But Christ says there's something in that. That there is that, and it's going to be on His standard. And it's not going to be what our conscience says. It's not going to be what our justification says. It is Him and Him alone. And the Lord will weigh it all out in the end. Now we come to verse 3. Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. I like this verse. I like it. Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. What does that mean? That means when it comes to, we've used this one before, when it comes to the first day of the week, you already know how you're going to decide. That has been established. You know what your decision is going to be, because that has been hopefully established for a long time. And that a long time ago, you determined that every first day of the week, you will worship God unless otherwise hindered. But that's an illustration of part of this, but this is how to decide, how to judge a situation. That's already been established, that there's no indecision, there's no stumbling in the dark, there's none of that. And yeah, there can be things that come around that you're not prepared for, or you've never heard of that before. Things that just happen, but you commit your works to the Lord, you know that His Word is going to be the answer. His Word's going to be the answer regardless. And I've told this story before, but it was, I'd gotten a call, and it was from an elder, and there was some problems going on, and it was things that were just tearing up the congregation. And he said, "Tell me what you would do." He said, "Someone comes to you and asks you about something you don't even know what they're talking about. You've never encountered it before. It's never been a thing before that you have heard of. They're talking about something that you don't know what it is. How do you answer them?" Well, the answer is simple. You say, "Let's stop what we're doing, and we're going to go to God's Word, and we're going to figure this one out. We're going to do a little bit of prep work, actually as much as we need. We're going to do as much study and preparation and everything that is needed in this, that we do this and we look for the answer. And the answer, without a doubt, is going to be by way of principles. Okay? And we don't need to be hasty in this. We don't need to make the decision today, which is good, because we're going to want to take our time and look up the decision. That's how you do it. And no doubt that does, and yeah, there have been times when I've been posed by like another preacher who has a specific problem. I've never come across that problem. I've never heard of that problem. That's just that's very unique in my way of thinking. But you can still find the answer. You can still find the answer, and know how that what the best direction is. You can know it, and commit your works to the Lord. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. And our paths will be, and our minds will be part of that. Our thoughts will be part of that, of where it's established. And someone comes around with an enticement, well, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. Someone comes around with something that doesn't sound quite good, and you already know this is probably going to head in the wrong direction. You know the answer to that already. Your thoughts are established, and it is a characteristic of someone who has some years of faith and has strengthened in faith to where they can answer a question very directly and just almost immediately. And whereas in the world, they may not be able to answer it so quickly or come to that conclusion. But how is it that you came to that conclusion so quickly? How is it that you know that this is right? Well, your thoughts have been established. That's why. Because you're using a scriptural basis. That you have Scripture to know how you ought to answer, and what the decision should be, and what the situation, what direction you go in this. Verse 4. The Lord has made all for Himself, yes, even the wicked for the day of doom. Now, a Calvinist would gladly take this out, no doubt they have, gladly take this out and show you that there is a set number that have been created to be saved, and everyone else is condemned. There is a set number that God created. These people, and these people are going to be saved regardless of their will, and these people are going to be condemned regardless of their will or their actions. Or it doesn't matter. That this is the way it is set. And they can use this, just strip it out, and say, well, here is the proof that the Lord has made all for Himself. Yeah, we can know that. Yes, even the wicked for the day of doom. Well, going to the first part, John chapter 1, verse 3, all things were made through Him. There's no question about that. All things, anything that was made, He made it. All right? Now the Godhead has been from eternity. The Godhead was never created. And that is hard to fathom. I can understand the words, but it's hard to fathom that, to grasp that. I have a better ability to grasp forever in the future I have a better grasp of that than forever in the past. And it's because I started here on this earth, and I'm still here on this earth, and all I know is just this path forward and having a beginning. Okay. But for something, the Godhead, that didn't have a beginning, that goes all the way to the past. But all the way to the eternity in the past. He's made all for himself, yes, even the wicked for the day of doom. Let's go to 2 Timothy, because we need to direct where this is, what this is saying, so that to help to direct us, actually, what this is saying. So we go to 2 Timothy chapter 2 and beginning in verse 20. Beginning there. But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honor, some for dishonor. All right, so in any house that you want to go to, and he says in a great house, you're going to find all kinds of objects that are in that house. You're going to find them. You're going to find things that are displayed as things of honor. You're also going to have some things that they're in that house that, in fact, they are vessels for dishonor, such as in our house. In our house, there are teacups and plates that are on display. Personally, I've never used them. Okay, they're not for the rabble. they're not for anything really other than being displayed, or it would be rare that they come down. All right, and it matters. It matters. But we have under the sink trash bags. Those trash bags are not vessels of honor. They are not displayed. They're under the sink. They're filled with garbage, and I take them out to the dumpster. That's a vessel of dishonor. All right? In a house, you're just going to have things that are beloved by those in the house, and those things that are just common, that they're not beloved at all. All right? I've never ever had any kind of nostalgic feeling for a trash bag. Never have. Of wondering, I wonder whatever happened to that trash bag. Well, I know what happened to the trash bag. I know what happened to the trash bag. But I honestly never, until this moment, or moments like this, it never crosses my mind. All right? Because it's a vessel of dishonor. So, one would think, aha! He is creating vessels of honor and creating vessels of dishonor. Some are like the priceless teacup. Others are like the garbage bag. But notice what he says here, verse 21. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from the latter. All right, that's that vessel of dishonor. That's what he's talking about. The wood, clay, that's those vessels of dishonor that are there. If someone cleanses himself from the latter, he will be a vessel for honor. So that if we didn't quite understand, because he doesn't say latter and former, he says latter. And so in case you didn't catch what that was, he now says, well, you can be a vessel for honor. That we don't have to be vessels of dishonor. Sanctified and useful for the master, prepared for every good work. And then he says this in the next one. Flee also useful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, peace with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. But avoid foolish and ignorant disputes. And it goes on from there. That one can make themselves, unlike trash bags and unlike teacups in nice plates, we can change ourselves. We can be a vessel of dishonor, or we can be a vessel of honor. It's our choice. We can cleanse ourselves from the latter. We don't have to be for dishonor. And we can be vessels of honor and prepared for every good work. That's what vessels of honor do. Now, we go back to our proverb in this, 16 and verse 4. The Lord has made all for Himself, yes, even the wicked for the day of doom. 1 Corinthians 15:25, for He must reign till He has put all enemies under His feet. He's going to do that, which means He will have enemies all the way to the last day. He's going to have enemies all the way to the last day. And the last enemy, of course, is death. Now, the Lord has made all for Himself, and everyone will glorify God one way or the other. Going to glorify Him. Even the atheists, even the blasphemers, even the skeptics, even the worst of the worst will glorify God. Let's start with the righteous first. The righteous glorify God in their actions, now on the earth. The righteous do that. The righteous, by being under the law of God and following it, they are glorifying Him. By knowing how He wants to be worshiped, learning that and then worshiping Him appropriately, they are glorifying Him. By learning how they are to live right from day to day as living right, they are glorifying Him. Doing good, being peacemakers, being hungering and thirst after righteousness, all of these things, and there's more that we can put into all of this that makes righteousness. But by doing those things, they are saying that God is right, God has rule over all, and I submit to that. Now, the wicked. The wicked, while being under the law of God, do not do His will. They do not glorify Him in this lifetime. Right now on this earth, they do not glorify Him. They may blaspheme. And someone can be doing that without even thinking that's what they're doing, but that is what they're doing. Doing their whatever pleases them for this moment, regardless of the law of God, doing any of those things, they're not glorifying Him, but they will. When justice is done and the day of judgment occurs and being tossed into hell, that glorifies God. That glorifies Him, because He is shown as right over His enemies. But you don't have to be one of those. You don't have to be one of His enemies. You can be solidly in His camp, solidly there, and glorify Him now by your own actions, by your own words, and He will glorify you. And of course, in heaven, it'll be both. It'll be a continuation of the glorification of God in heaven by the righteous, and Him, that glorified church and the righteous, going all the way back to the beginning of mankind, all the righteous being there, and they belong to Him, and He is with them. Okay? He is with them. And all of the wicked being cast away exactly as He said. He warned it gave the warning again and again and again, you don't listen to it, you're going to find out he was right. You're going to find out, and he will be glorified. So we just read it again. The Lord has made all for himself. So everything is made for him. Yes, even the wicked for the day of doom. Now, verse 5. Everyone proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Though they join forces, none will go unpunished. All right, just very quickly in this. There are no exceptions to any of these things. Everyone proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. So get pride out of your life. Get that out of your life. Learn to be humble. Learn to be meek. Learn to serve Him and serve others. Don't let arrogance rule you. Don't let it. Just as we made mention in verse 2 that anybody can justify their actions, anybody can also justify an arrogance. I'm better than you regardless. Regardless. I'm better than you. You may be richer. You may be better looking. You may be stronger and faster and smarter and any more talented. It doesn't matter what you are. I'm always better than you. Always. That is the arrogance. That is how arrogance works. And I've told this story before. It was a friend of mine, and he was actually being very forthright at that moment. He said, you know, when I enter the room, I immediately think I'm the smartest one in this room. Okay? That's not the way to enter into a room. All right? And he said, he was asking, what is that? Well, it's arrogance is what that is. All right, that's not a good quality. That's not a good quality. Even if it is true, what does it matter? Even if, and there were some I know would give him run for the money, and that, yeah, he wouldn't have been. Nevertheless, entering in, you know, that was his assessment of everybody. I am better than anyone here. That's not a good way to have. That's not a good personality. All right, and you can be rid of that. You can be rid of that. And but everyone proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. All right, to think that you acting that way is actually an abomination. Okay, you might want to look at some other things that are also considered an abomination with that word being used. Yeah, that proud heart, but hands that shed innocent blood. All right, a false witness. All these are in the same category. You may think of yourself as, I'm not a murderer, or I've never lied under oath. I've never done any of those things. But God can hate your attitude that you have, that proud in heart, that you're always right, that you're always the best, that you always are the one that is on top. You're always the one that must have His way. That is arrogance and looking down your nose at everybody else. That's not what God wants. Now we come to this. Though they join forces, none will go unpunished. Once again, that's a promise. And we can go to Psalm 2 and see these words. You cannot defy God and not go unpunished. You cannot disobey God, proudly disobeying Him, and go unpunished. You may think that you got it because you weren't punished yesterday. Doesn't look like you're being punished today. Probably not going to be punished next week. Doesn't look like it anyway. but eventually it's coming. And it's only by the grace of God that you're able to take your next breath. And His willingness to bless us all. So we just read this. Psalm 2, verse 1, why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? All right. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord, that's against Jehovah, and against His anointed, that's the Messiah, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. Now, who's saying this? This would be the Gentiles and the Jews. This is kings and rulers. They're taking counsel together, and it's against Jehovah and His Christ. In verse 4, He who sits in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision. To Him it's laughable that they think they can do it. And it would be out of sheer arrogance that they would think such a thing. You haven't really thought this through, have you? That they would think such a thing. Then He shall speak to them in His wrath, that's verse 5, and distress them in His deep displeasure. Verse 6, yet I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. Regardless of any work they may have done, the raging, the counsels, all of that together, they fail. Yet His king is still placed on His holy hill of Zion, and you did your worst. And you failed. All right, so everyone proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Though they join forces, none will go unpunished. We're going to need to stop for this morning, and thank everybody for being with us.